Welcome to the Media and Communications Careers in the Media podcast. I am Sam. I'm joined with Dale Moon from Birmingham City, who is going to talk to us about his role working in football and sport and how the media side of that impacts his life. Welcome.
Thank you ever so much, Sam. Thanks for having me on.
My first question is, who are you? What do you do?
So I suppose the official title is Media and Content Manager at Birmingham City Football Club, but essentially that is basically the press officer. So you'll hear a variety of different roles. Different clubs have different structures, but essentially it's my job to manage the content that goes out across all of our platforms, but then also manage the media and existing relationships with external press, any media requests that come into the club, managing on a match day and a non-match day, and just the general strategy and communications of the football club. So little bits of everything. It's a wide-ranging role. Expect the unexpected, but very, very fulfilling as well.
Yeah, I can imagine so, especially like with outside media growing more and more and more. You get stuff off social media and all sorts now, so I'm guessing it proper can push you quite far.
Yeah, it has, especially with the amount of requests you get. Because, like you say, now there's more and more platforms and different media businesses and organisations starting up who all want a chunk of football. Like it gets clicks, it gets readership, it gets listenership. So from us as one of the football clubs in the region, we're always inundated with requests to speak to a player, to a manager, as well as conducting our own internal interviews for Blues TV or our website or our programme. So very busy, but if you're into football, it's a privileged position. Obviously, you go into games home and away. You're getting to know players on a personal level, management staff. You're at the heart of what happens, so the highs and the lows, or joys and sorrows, as our song goes. You go through it all. So, yeah, very, very lucky to be in this position.
How did you end up stumbling into communications and media, really, as a starting point from maybe like a college or a uni point sort of thing?
Yeah. So I, like all lads, wanted to play football when I was younger. So I was half decent, but ended up bounced around a few different clubs before I got to about 17, 18. And effectively, as part of my college course, so I was an apprentice at the time at Walsall. But rather than doing the normal sort of qualification that you get as a youth team player, I asked to go back to college, do some studies there. That then helped me go straight to university when it didn't work out on the footballing side. Went to do broadcast journalism at Nottingham Trent, an hour down the road. Meant I could move home, but close enough, good enough course. 3 years there, and then it was a case of trying to get myself in. I wanted to stay in the game. Obviously, I can't play. But I didn't fancy coaching, and so I thought, well, I like to think I know about the game. I can talk and write about the game a little bit. So the media was the best avenue for me, really. And so graduated, and it's what I say to all current students and recent graduates. That first step is the toughest step to take straight out of university. And it took me a while. Like, I can't sit here and say it was like the perfect route straight in. You always think, I've graduated, I'm going to go straight into Sky Sports, BBC Sport, one of these big papers or organisations. It was far from it. So it took me 18 months to get my first foot on the ladder. End up going into sort of sports PR and advertising. So it wasn't quite what I wanted to do. It wasn't like sports journalism.
But you were still inside of sport.
Exactly. I was still sort of in the right ballpark, and I was parachuted into these amazing opportunities with national teams, with Vauxhall, who were big sponsors at the time of Home Nations. And then it was like the big leap into, okay, I've had great experience here, but it's not quite what I want to do on a day-to-day. Now I need to take that next step, and that was what led me to Walsall, really. And that was my first proper job as like a media guy at a football club.
Lovely stuff. Was going back to a bit of uni. How did that experience and like what you've learned and life lessons and both what you've actually learned academically, how does that really apply into what you do? Like you've said, you do like you've done things like commentary.
Yeah.
You do the like press stuff sort of. How does that stuff you've learned apply really back to where you are now?
Yeah, that's it. So I think I was privileged enough, first of all, to be on a really good practical course to start with. So at Nottingham Trent, it's not just theory-based. Obviously, like a lot of courses now, they'll try and get you out into the big wide world and practice a lot of what you're learning. So we were always encouraged to go out with a camera, a tripod, go and conduct interviews, vox pop, start your editing, go out into the big wide world of sport in general. If you wanted to do sport, if it was news, you could go and do news. But it was really a lot of the practical skills that I still find myself doing now. The university course, laid the foundations for. So whether that's basic editing skills, just how to frame correctly, interviewing skills, writing, it was a massive sort of variety of different skills that you learn. Sort of the bread and butter of journalism really is what you get on your course. And now you're sort of out there in a profession, in a career where those are the sort of fundamentals, and you just build on those with more and more experience. So I think I'd look back on my time at university to say it gave me the fundamentals, and then you start to just develop a specialism and build more and more experience.
And especially if you're going straight out into public, like you were saying, out on the streets, camera, tripod, like you're going to encounter some things, aren't you? Like that's what you're doing. You're getting thrown straight into the deep end. So you're developing that experience nice and early, really.
Absolutely, like it breaks the fear barrier. Like go up to strangers and ask them questions on all sorts of crazy stuff, and that's what our news days were, and that's what it was all about. And that gave you the confidence, even to get knocked back. I mean, you know what it's like. Maybe yourself as a student, you'll go up to people and ask them a question on something they just don't care about. They don't, they got no time for you, but. That negative experience is a positive because you've now
develop and grow, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
Exactly. It's a bit of you're more robust. You're used to being knocked back. You know that you're not going to get the perfect answer every time. So I really encourage people to get out there and start putting their university their skills into practice, really, and that's the key to it. Get out there.
Best way to learn, isn't it? If you can put it straight in, what you're learning, straight into an environment where you've
that's it.
And it's sort of like what we're doing today. Like
absolutely,
we've learned about podcasting. You learn what it is, and then you've actually got to implement it, which is always a good sort of starting point.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, Sam. And like I say, it's there's no better way of being thrown in the deep end sometimes, and it's cliche, but once you're in it, then you sort of have to sink or swim. And so I don't think there's any better way of getting students or journalism students in particular out there to face the public, to ask those questions in a real practical environment. And luckily I was exposed to that as part of my course.
Good stuff. Through that, I'm presuming you've met some right characters and things like that. But on the flip side to that, have you met any people like at that age where you've actually networked with them and that's sort of like developed out? You'd mentioned about Vauxhall and the Home Nation stuff.
Yeah.
Like that as a networking thing, is that like where you sort of started with, or how did that come about?
This is a really, really apt question without you even knowing. So today, last week I was contacted by a journalist who I met as part of my job at Vauxhall. We were actually covering the Under 21 European Championships in Israel in 2013, and I was lucky enough to go out there, and I was embedded with a group of probably 6 to 8 journalists who were all covering that tournament from English papers. And just out of contacts and networking, you sort of get to know all these guys. And one of them now works for PA. He covers the Manchester area, and he contacted me 2 weeks ago, just touch base, how are you doing? Wanted to speak to Tahith Chong, and we've just facilitated an interview with him today with Tahith Chong.
Stuff.
So yeah, it's the most apt question. And just being in press rooms, in press lounges, in press boxes, you're constantly rubbing shoulders with people who you could cross paths with further down the line. So again, this is a massive piece of advice for someone who's luckily enough to go out there and get that exposure and experience in a football club environment, is go and talk to people in press lounges. I know it's alien to you sometimes to go up to a complete stranger whilst they're reading through their notes or going through a team sheet, but introduce yourself. Don't be scared to go and do that, because actually they'll remember your face or your name. So when that pops up and you want some work experience, or actually you've just joined the newspaper where he's the top chief football correspondent, you've already got some sort of common ground. So I would completely encourage contacting and networking. And I know it's always reiterated to students, but having been in it, and I'm just giving you a real world example today, it's worth its weight in gold. The more people you talk to in the industry, whether it's on LinkedIn, whether you've got that little black book with all the numbers in, like the old school journalism book, however you keep your contacts, use them, keep them, touch base every so often, because you just never know when your paths are going to cross again.
Just as a bit of context for anyone who doesn't really follow football, Man United loaned Birmingham City this absolute wonder kid, Tahith Chong, best player I've ever seen in a Blues kit. So he's come down from Manchester, so now you've got your journalist patch up there who wanted to interview us, presuming about experience and things like that.
That's it.
Because that's where really, as a football side of thing, you get the development of a player, but you also get that development of contacts and how that can actually link into what you're doing. Like as you said, someone you met 10 years ago now.
Exactly, nearly 10 years ago now, and you still cross paths. I mean, there's journalists that have since gone on to be lecturers and have gone into certain universities just through that contact. So you are always, it's a bit of a village, and I think a lot of industries are like this in that you can never guess how you're going to cross paths with someone further down the line, but you'll be amazed at how frequent that actually happens. And so I'm constantly, whether it's other press officers who were at a football club or now another one, it could be someone who was on work experience with us a few years ago who've now moved to another club. So you're always bumping into different people.
Sort of moving on from that. Looking at a bit of a stalk on your LinkedIn. You've always worked within football and sport as a whole. Was that always the end goal sort of thing? And was that the dream once you realised that the playing side was over sort of thing?
It's not over yet. I'm 31. I'm still harbouring some hopes. Yeah.
Get you back at centre back. Yeah,
we need it. Yeah, I think so. Like I say, I was just a mad football fan. Like it was like most lads. I mean, I played it and had aspirations of playing it professionally, but as soon as that didn't work, I had to stay in the game. All my eggs were in that basket to an extent. And yeah, like I say, that first job at May Sport in Nottingham was brilliant for me because I was at international football. I was, skipped a few steps, if anything, and found myself now travelling Europe, covering Wales to start with, then Scotland, then England at European and World Cup campaigns. You're in Kiev 1 month and then over in San Marino in another. So it was unbelievable for like a 22-year-old to be out in this
straight
world.
Into there.
Henry Winter's here, and there's so many number one journalists that are in the same press room, and that's a great opportunity to go and talk to people. So, I always wanted to stay in sport, but that was sponsorship advertising. So although I was in the right place, it wasn't the right
what
role.
you wanted to do. Yeah.
And just when you think you've had enough and you want to take that leap, a big tournament comes along or a big international game comes along. And you have to stay there to see that because it's the most enjoyable thing. So those little golden eggs were always keeping me in the job. But then, I don't regret for 1 second stepping right the way down from, I remember having a conversation with my dad. And he was saying, "Are you sure?" He was very supportive of me, but are you sure? Like, you're going from international football here down to a League One football club. No disrespect to Walsall, but people will look at that on the face of it and say, "Well,
how come you've gone from there to there? It's a massive step down."
Exactly, but the role in itself and where it got me to was exactly the right thing that I needed to do. And luckily, 5 years in this job at my club has proven that it was probably the right thing to do.
Yeah, exactly. So you're a Blues fan working in Blues now. I mean, you've sort of had to go to Walsall first, but it's just a loan sort of thing. Isn't it? But how did that experience of being in that huge environment, like once again, you've just name dropped Henry Winters, for example, back to like networking, how does that sort of impact you again now? Like that, what you learnt there, how can you sort of implement where you are now?
Yeah, what I'd say then is I was lucky enough to, like I say, there's some massive names that are right at the very top. They're the number one chief football reporters or correspondents for their papers or their organisations that you get to know. So then now you find yourself sort of 6, 7, 8 years down the line and they're contacting you for interviews. So then you as the young lad who you were sort of starstruck a little bit to go and talk to, now you're actually in a professional position with a bit of authority. They might need your help on one thing or another. And likewise with us, I mean, journalists have written things about our clubs and our football club where I'll need to contact them and have a chat about some inaccuracies or running stories by us, and they're with people that you already have a rapport with. So again, when it comes to that networking, you just never know where it's going to lead, and you never know where your path's going to go. But likewise, they could find themselves rubbing shoulders with you in press lounges at St Andrews. We're constantly having members of the press who I may have met in passing or had a conversation with briefly a few years ago, but names and faces. And as I say, football's a bit of a village, so you get to know everyone relatively quickly, and constantly working with them, collaborating with them and seeing them in our press lounge, which is crazy.
Sort of on the same lines, talking back roughly on networking, I took a look on your social media pages. Obviously, working with the Blues, it's sort of everyone sort of sees it. You're very active on Twitter, like always speaking about when you're doing stuff for transfer windows and when you're speaking about games. Even then, when you're still speaking as a fan, but in a professional environment. How was your social media in that blend of personal, professional? Also helped when you're going in to look at networking with people online who you might not see in person, but you can send a quick direct message to because you both follow each other, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's it. I think now that's a very, very tough transition to make because we grew up with social media. So for us, it was just a personal thing. It was I remember the early days of social media where you were just there to tell people where you were or what you were doing. Yeah. So it was like Dale Moon was at Nando's having whatever with his mates, and it quickly just transformed into what is now, as you say, like a massive news source, particularly on Twitter. And so you almost have to tailor that. Now, a lot of people, as you rightly say, will either go down this is the professional route and this is all about my job. Some will have a separate account for their personal conversations, friends, relationships. Whereas quite rightly so, I think mine tries to tread the balance a little bit. But I'm always very acutely aware of who's reading it, and the tone to strike that right as well. Because although you can put in your bio views as your own, but it's still Dale Moon at Birmingham City Football Club that takes the majority of your feed. They know that you're the media manager there, so you do have to be very careful in terms of getting the tone right. But I think there's ways of doing it. I think I like to think I'm sort of treading that balance.
I think yours is brilliant. It's the same as Ian Duttons, who's just taken over, hasn't he? His is brilliant. What he's doing with the club's brilliant as well. But as a social media page, in my opinion, especially someone who's relatively high up in what they're doing at the club, you need to still be able to be like, oh, you're a Blues man, so you still want to be speaking about the club you love, not just as that professional sort of route. Back sort of onto that, and you said today, for example, was media day, Thursdays, interviews. I'm assuming it's a busy day anyway. What does a typical working week look like? Let's say we're playing a home game on the Tuesday, away game on the Saturday.
Good question.
How would that sort of roll?
Okay, so match days are obviously, as you'll know, the main event of our week. So if we have a two-game week, Tuesday, Saturday, some clubs will have a press conference on a Monday, so you'll get Monday mornings are your meeting mornings, really. So we tend to have ours in the afternoon, but that's just various times. Time in lieu means that certain staff are off in the morning, that they're due from their work in the weekend. So we'll have a morning meeting. We'll go through where we are on that week. There's a big board up in our office. Where are we going to be? What resource do we need? What interviews? Who needs to be where? Just for a bit of context, we work with another department, which is sort of the Blues TV department. We sort of have 3 members of staff there, so we'll need to pull on their resources. Can you come here to interview so-and-so? Can you be at the training ground to do a press conference? So Mondays are your planning day. If you have a game on a Tuesday, though, it could be a press conference in there. Some managers like to do it, some managers don't. They don't think enough changes between the Saturday before and that Tuesday. So they'll just answer a few questions on that Tuesday opponent after a game on a Saturday. Fine. Just saves everyone a job on a Monday when it's match day -1, so the day before a match day. Set pieces need to be done. There's lots of work to do. And if they're travelling, it's an away game on the Tuesday, the team will travel on the Monday. So you don't really have a lot of contact time to do a lot of content work on a Monday. Lots of planning there. Tuesday's a match day. So match days are very busy. So I'll basically look after the accreditation process. Anyone who wants to be in our press box to our press lounge will have to go into a central system, apply for that privilege. I'll then go in, approve it, give them the relevant access, print passes, get them all together. Making sure the press lounge is ready to go. We'll do a map of the press box so everyone sits in their correct seats, whether they need ISDN access for their live commentaries. Or just a desk area for print journalists. So we'll go through all of that. Pre-match prep, so we'll make sure we do previews. So our content team will do previews, opposition pieces, maybe a manager's piece on his quotes from the press conference. Make sure that's good and ready to go. So we'll line up everything towards match day. As that Tuesday evening goes on, we'll go and do team sheets, which is 75 minutes before the game. You go down to the official's office, a representative from the home club, the away club will both meet with the official, exchange official team sheets. I'll take a copy of both and then put it into a format that's an official team sheet. God, then match days are just crazy in terms of the closer you get to kick-off, you're running around then. So again, we're going back to contacts and relationships, spending some time in a press lounge, chatting away, a bit of small talk with everyone who's attending, keeps their relationships up. They get to know who you are. You can talk about issues of the day concerning the football club. And I think can't stress the importance of that enough, because it isn't a tangible. You're not making money out of that, or you're not producing content out of that. But actually, by having those relationships, absolutely, like further down the line, you're going to have to call upon those. So I think that's, again, such a valuable activity, a valuable part of the role is to make sure those relationships are good. And then into match day, it's obviously we've all got separate roles. So our social media officer is looking after the Twitter feed. We'll have someone on match reporting. We'll have someone in the studio doing Blues TV. We'll have someone looking after the live stream and big screen. I mean, it's the whole plethora of different roles. Post-match is always very busy, taking the manager, so it's my job to look after the manager. We'll have somebody else looking after players, taking him to do his media obligations, straight to Sky Sports if they have the rights, then it's to our radio guys, then it's into the press lounge to deal with the print press, then it's us for Blues TV. So almost taking him around different stations post-match. Day after a match day, so a Wednesday of this week, will be a little quieter for us, so we'll reflect on the game. But
done a lot of reflecting this week, haven't we?
We'll dine out on a win. As you know, we'll go to town on that. And yeah, that's really, again, planning ahead of the next game. So Wednesdays tend to be the players' day off. So they're not in the building. So a lot of housekeeping goes on a Wednesday, reflecting on the game. Thursday, as we say before, another big press conference day. So we'll invite the media in to do an interview with the manager. Press conferences are always important. It's where you'll read during the week about managers' thoughts or injury updates or whatever it might be will come from a press conference. Again, that's a couple of different interviews. One with radio, it's 3 in fact. One with radio, one with print and TV, and one with Blues TV. Then we'll get lots of content in terms of TikTok stuff or video interviews or training. We'll go and film training and cut a lot of that stuff on a Thursday. Friday, match day -1 again, so you're back round quickly again to preparing for a match day. So it is 2 match weeks. You almost go into autopilot when you've been in sort of the role. You know exactly what that looks like. When you just have a match on a Saturday, for instance, then you can start to do more of the big featurey stuff during the week. It's a bit more time to play with. So your high production value stuff, your long form documentaries that go on YouTube and your website, preparing for end of season awards. We're going to be 20 years after we got promoted to the Premier League this year. So there's a little bit of work going on there to do with those bigger sort of documentary style products. They'll happen in your 1 match week. So I know it's been a long winded answer, but hopefully there's enough detail.
That's all right. Well, it could get even longer. I was just going to mention, I imagine it ramps up quite a lot during your Julys, August and your Januaries. How does a transfer window sort of affect your... But let's just take let's take like a 3-day block sort of thing. You get told a transfer, from getting told that this is potentially on the cards to actually putting out his signed contract on social media and stuff. What does that look like for you?
That process. Okay, so we will hear from our club secretary. As it gets frog out my throat. We hear from the club secretary first of all. So she will contact us to say, now we've Lyle Taylor's coming in to do a medical. He's signing on loan. So we will now mobilise. Now it's 100 miles an hour, right? Get hold of your contact team. We have to think of one. Can we get an article ready to go? Can we get an in-depth piece in his background? So I think you'll see his profile as well on the website. What is our video concept? Let's all get together on a call or around a table. Let's
Which
think
have
of
been brilliant, I must say.
It's crazy.
Some of them have been brilliant.
Yeah, it's we've certainly gone to town on sort of the creative aspect of that, but I think you can with transfer announcements.
It's exciting as well.
Exactly.
Like the build-up, like the one that will always stick in my one is the Mikel Sanizé one. That was brilliant.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Because they're good news stories, you can afford to be a little bit more creative and risky with those. Now, if that's a bit of more serious news, you wouldn't go sort of down that route. So, the minute we hear from the club secretary, then it's a case of, right, I will then touch base with the selling club or the parent club's press officer. Let's, what are the terms? Let's arrange an announcement time together so both clubs will announce at the same time. In the meantime, we're getting all of our cameras down to the training ground. We're thinking of our concept ideas. We might need to go and get any props that we want to use. We're getting music ready to go. We're getting a rough sort of plan as to what frames are going to look like. And then once we have the player, it has to move very quick. You have to be very efficient here because you probably got 20 to 25 minutes with a player. They're having a medical. They want to go home and get all their stuff because they're going to train tomorrow. They need to go back to where they've come from. So the last thing they want to do is hang around, wait for you to set up.
Stuff.
You have to make sure everything is ready to go. It's seamless and efficient. So you probably get 20 minutes with a player. So then you're going through, right, Blues TV interview. We're going to have to do a little bit of, not acting, but, just play along with our little transfer idea. This is our idea. Sell it to the player because you might be asking them to do something a little bit alien to them. Sell an idea to them. Little message for social media. Any other bits that you might need doing, signing a shirt, photo shoot with our club photographer, of course, getting that in the bag. That goes off to our graphics team. They get that ready. So there's so much work that goes on before you see that announcement. And the biggest frustration of ours from a football club is you can put in all this work, you can have a fantastic idea, but if it leaks, it's out there. And that is a killer because you...
Very bluesy as well.
Absolutely,
for it to happen.
And the element of surprise goes. I would love nothing more than no one to hear about a transfer until we put that little teaser out to say something's happening. Then you watch social media go crazy, and then we can do the full reveal.
Maybe we said we weren't going to bring them up, but that lot down the road, they're very good at it, aren't they?
Yeah, but this is the thing. Like you see other clubs now, they're really good at sort of transfer announcements. I think if I go back 5 years, it was such a trend-setting thing to do, to be a bit quirky with a reveal. Like transfer reveals weren't a thing. It was a web article and a social media post and maybe a picture of him in the kit. Now, expectation levels of supporters
So
have
much
gone
higher,
to
yeah.
and we're a victim of our success in that instance, because now if we just done a web article and a social
Yeah.
media piece, there's a lack of effort
Mm.
because we've really sort of ramped up our emphasis on transfer reveals, and it's a massive part. I mean, transfer deadline day is
Nightmare.
carnage.
Yeah.
Carnage.
We'll switch up for a bit. We'll have a bit more fun with it now. I've got a couple of questions. What's like the most fun you've had on the job? Like, where's your most fun? I'm going to imagine like something down the transfer lines and stuff like that.
Most fun. Yeah, you have great fun with players. The satisfaction comes from seeing your piece of work do really well and get received really well. Troy Deeney's transfer reveal was a massive one for the city and us. It would be on the cards for years and years. Fun-wise, pre-seasons are always good fun. They're hard work. So pre-season tour, when you go away, been to Austria, the lads went to Portugal, which I didn't go on. But when you go away, which is true, and obviously Scotland this year, but you're away for a week block solid with the players. You get to know them around the hotel room, everything around the hotel, at training ground. They're great fun. Match days are brilliant. I mean, sometimes you go away from home and get a brilliant result. The drive home,
Luton.
you just done a
Best away game I've done.
When do we go away and win 5-0?
5-0. Brilliant day out.
So you're on a complete high there. The whole match days are fun in themselves.
Yeah.
Of course, if you lose a game, you get bad. You're flat for the rest of the weekend. But just the content that you can do off the back of a win for the rest of that week is so much more than what you can do with a defeat. But there's so many just fun or enjoyable elements to the job, because you just go through every high that the players go through. So
is there like a specific like memorable moment sort of thing that you've got mainly with work, but how it can sort of link in? What's like the big memorable one that you've said you can only hold on one memory for the rest of your life?
Oh, it's a
from
great
work. What would it be?
Great question. Going around. This is away from Blues in an extent, but going to these grounds on the continent now, and you look at obviously the Ukraine conflict that's going on. I was so lucky to go to Kiev and follow an England qualifying fixture, and the noise, and I could still remember the walk from the team hotel. We were lucky to stay in the team hotel. I walked half an hour to the stadium. I just wanted to take in a bit of the city, and there's this drum that just permeates across the whole city on a match day. And I look back now and I think what's going on there, and with all the trouble that's happening, I just think what a privileged position to have ever been there and experienced that for an England game. So that was unbelievable. To travel with international football was great, but in terms of with Blues, there's been, the final day of the season we stayed up at Bristol City was
brilliant.
Was crazy, yeah. We were doomed. Shea Adams scored obviously after 20 minutes, and that was just like the longest 70 minutes of my life. But the carnage from the away end, I can remember. I met sort of family members at the cricket club on the way out of Bristol, on the way home.
And
that
said about that.
But there's been so many hot. It's very, very tough to have one.
To have one specific one. Sort of going to wrap it back around now and wrap it up a bit. If you had to give like a piece of advice to someone who wanted to get involved with like communications and PR sort of thing within a football club or within sort of any sport, what would you say to, like, as a bit of advice to get people going?
So there's a few really. First of all, if you're currently studying, that's expected. A degree now is, as important as it is, it's what a lot of people will apply with, but it's what you do on top of that.
On top of it.
So what we look for as an employer, and we've taken on people recently as recent graduates as well from universities in the area. What have you done to show your commitment to the role on top of your journalism degree? So have you gone and contributed to programmes? Have you gone into football clubs? Have you done match day reporting? Do you run a blog? How is your social media presented? Is your cover letter written to the tailored role? Is your CV relevant? So get yourself out there on top of your degree. Network as best as you can. But how you present yourself, like demonstrate that actually you're committed to a career down this path. And you might have to involve some voluntary work and work experience and doing some stuff off your own back to start with, and it's tough. I'm not going to sit here and lie. But once you get yourself through that door, then that's up to you. Then you make those relationships, get your first step, which is the toughest step when you graduate. I can't stress that one enough. But when you do, what a fantastic opportunity to work in media within sport, and I'd encourage everyone and anyone to go down that route.
Lovely stuff. Thank you for coming on. That is basically us done today, for today at least.
You're welcome, Sam.
Thank you very much.
Up the Blues.
Up the Blues. Fine.
Cheers.
Keep it on.